Alright, welcome back to the Blaise XPerience, everyone. I'm happy to be back here with you again, and I hope you're excited for another new episode. Today's episode is actually another intro episode. So if you don't know already, in our intro episodes, this is where I talk about a game that hasn't been talked about on the podcast before. And basically in these episodes, I kind of go over the overall gist of the game, and I give you more of an idea of the overall aspects of the game. And then any future episodes done on that game, they'll be a little bit more in-depth on a specific topic. So today's episode is actually on Vigor. And anyone that's watched me on Mixer knows that I've actually streamed a lot of Vigor already. So if you see me on Mixer, then you've already seen me stream a lot of Vigor, but I haven't actually talked about it in the podcast yet. And that was mainly because of some scheduling issues. I just had some things already scheduled in advance, and I didn't really want to move those around. So this is the spot that, fit well for Vigor, and this is our first episode for Vigor. We will definitely do at least one more on Vigor, and hopefully, people will enjoy it, and we can do many more than that. But we will definitely do, this episode and at least one more on Vigor. But I hope people are going to enjoy this because I've really enjoyed streaming it. It's definitely a game that I really enjoy streaming, and I hope you all are going to, definitely enjoy this episode. But before we get into Vigor, just a couple of podcast notes. I want to announce that our next stream will be Friday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. This will be a stream of State of Decay 2, and you can find that on mixer.com/Blaise XPerience. Our next podcast will be our State of Decay podcast on Saturday. We always have a State of Decay podcast on Saturday, so if you enjoy that game, then tune in every Saturday for a new State of Decay 2 episode. And I do also want to announce that anyone who's a State of Decay fan, there are big plans in the works for State of Decay. I have, something in the works that I am planning with other people, and that's all I'll share right now, but it's going to be something, that's pretty big, and I hope it's going to go well. So I will, announce more about that soon, potentially even Saturday's episode. So we'll see how the planning is going, but when I get a little bit further into the planning, I will announce more about that. But just stay tuned. There's some big plans coming for the State of Decay game in terms of this podcast. And then last but not least, this past Saturday, I actually was a guest on the Horrible Gamers podcast again. This is the second guest episode I did with them, and it went really well, and they're a great group of guys there, so definitely check out that episode. It's Horrible Gamers podcast, episode number 220. So I'd really appreciate anyone checking that out and, showing them some love. I will post a link for that in the description of this show. So if you want to check it out, there'll be a link in the show to download that episode. But I would definitely recommend, checking their podcasts out and listening to them long term. It's one of the few gaming podcasts I listen to every week, and I think they do a great job. But that being said, we can just right into Vigor here. So this episode is titled, What is Vigor? And that is because, a lot of times in my stream, that's like the first question I get from people that don't know about the game. What is Vigor? And it's a little bit hard to describe because it takes a lot of elements from a lot of games. When people ask me on stream, I usually say it combines like the survival and looting elements of State of Decay along with like a PvP aspect of a PUBG. It's not a PUBG because a lot of people ask if it's PUBG. It's definitely not PUBG. And it's definitely not State of Decay, but I think it pulls some elements from both of those, and it makes for a really unique game. So we're going to get into all the aspects of that today, but basically from what the developer said, they say that the game is a loot and shoot game. That's how they describe it, so it makes kind of sense, because basically in this game you're doing a lot of looting, and you can kind of shoot enemies as they, go around you and try and take their loot too. But there is base building in it and different things like that, so we'll get into that in a second. But the game is set in 1991 Norway, and you play as an outlander trying to survive the world and obtain as much loot as possible. And this game is basically set, around like nuclear war type thing where there's actually radiation that comes into the game afterwards. We'll get into that a little later, but that's kind of like the premise. You're in 1991 Norway, and you're trying to survive in the world, gather the supplies that you need to survive. The game does offer base building, like I said. And this base building is in a safe base that cannot be raided. So I've had people ask me that on streams. Your base cannot be raided. So your base is basically like a safe spot where you, build things, you practice with your guns. You can practice at a shooting range, things like that. but your base is a safe place. And then when you go into the maps, there's like maps in the game, and when you go into the maps, that's where it's not safe. But your base is a safe area. But there are 6 maps offered in the game. We will get into what types of maps are a little bit later, but there's 6 total right now. And the maps are played in a loot grabbing and like PvP encounter called instances. So that's basically when you enter a map, this is called an instance because this is where you try to get your loot, and this is also where players can kill you, is in the maps. And each instance has a supply drop which has better loot. So that is kind of similar to like a PUBG, for example, where there's a supply drop that comes. But this supply drop, there's only one in the entire game, and it drops a wooden crate, and you or anyone else in the game can get that wooden crate, and you have to try and escape with it. If you do get the wooden crate, then you can take it back to your base with you, and then you can open it at your base, and there's some better loot in there. Usually loot's like, it has a couple of, really great guns, it has a really great blueprint to make a great gun, or it has like 1,000 materials that are, materials are very valuable in this game. So it has things like that, but basically the loot that you find in this wooden crate is usually stuff that it would take you a lot longer to find if you didn't find the wooden crate. But one of the unique things with this game is if you die in one of the maps, then you lose everything. So you not only lose the stuff that you actually found in that game, you lose everything you brought with you too. So say you brought, a machine gun, you brought a knife, you brought like 3 bandages, you brought all that with you. If you got killed by somebody in the game, you would lose that knife, you would lose those 3 bandages, and you would lose that machine gun. All of that would be gone for good. You would permanently not have it anymore. So that's kind of what's cool about the game too, is that it has a risk and reward thing. You have to decide how much you want to risk. Personally, when I play, I usually don't bring a lot with me just because, you never know what you're going to encounter. And if you die suddenly, you don't want to lose too much. So I usually only bring, 1, maybe 2 weapons with me in some very rare cases. But a lot of times, if you just, jump in there with a knife, you can actually make it out pretty well. I've had a lot of games on stream where I jumped in with only a knife on me, and it was a lot of fun. I got some kills with a knife, and I escaped with the drop box and everything. So you don't have to jump in with the best guns all the time. It's up to you how you want to play, and that's what's cool about this game. And another cool thing with this game, too, is some people don't like it, but there's no kill feed. So because there's no kill feed, you never know how many players are actually still in the game. Because with this game, you can actually escape without being killed. So say, 8 players are in a game, 2 of those players might have escaped, 3 of those players might have got killed, and there's 3 players left on the map, but you won't know that. For all you know, there could be 7 players besides you. So at all times, you never know how many people are actually in the world. And that kind of adds some tension to the game, which I like that tension because there's been times where I was, all peaceful and I thought no one was around me. I was just, looting a building. I walk out the door of the building, and the next second I know, I get shot and I'm dead. So, it can happen that instantly. It's like, oh, wow, I had no idea there's anyone there. So that's what's kind of cool about this game is there's a lot of tension there, and there's a lot of surprises. So you always have to try and be ready. And it's definitely hard to do at times because there's been a lot of times where I just wasn't really, focused. I wasn't really paying attention as much as I should have been, and somebody got the jump on me because of that. In this game, it only takes a half a second of not really paying attention, and you could die from that because you don't know if somebody's around the corner. But it's also balanced in the sense that it's not, 100-player battle royale like PUBG is, because this game isn't a battle royale. This game either has 8 or 16 players in a match. So that is, a reasonable amount where there's still some tension there, but at the same time, it's not too much tension where there's going to be a player, every 5 seconds. There's only one map that gets very congested and you see a lot of players, and that's one of the smaller maps, but we'll get into that later. But I will say that the game is still in game preview, so it does have a lot of issues still. So, if you are going to play this game, just understand that and, just be patient with it because there are a lot of issues and they know about these issues and they're working on fixing them. The reason it's in game preview is because they're trying to get feedback from people to fix these issues and they're trying to get more funds. That way they can actually make the game better. And the full launch is in February. So in February of next year, this game will, February 2019 that is, for anyone that's listening to this, maybe next year if you're listening to this. In February 2019, the game will launch free to play. So right now, what happens is you have a 2-hour free trial if you wanted to try it now. So go try that 2-hour free trial. And then if you want to keep playing it after the 2-hour free trial, it's $20. So $20 US, that is. I'm not sure if it's the same in other countries, but I know in the United States it's $20 American. So I'm not sure if they had the same conversion for other countries or if they, increase or decrease the price. So you would have to check that part out, but it shouldn't be too bad. But along with that $20, if you buy it, it allows you to access the game for life. So if you buy it, for the $20, then you would have it, through the game's lifetime because it's going free to play in February. But for you actually giving them the $20 and, paying for the game early, not only do you get to play the game throughout its iterations, you get to give, the devs feedback if you want to. And not only you get to see all the changes as they happen and, grow with the game, but on top of that, they do give you a founder's pack and they do give you a exclusive founder shirt, a exclusive founder's cap, there's a founder's emote, and then they give you $40 worth of game currency. So none of this stuff is available just yet. So, don't buy the game and think, oh, where's all my stuff, and then complain to the devs, because what they said is they're releasing all these items throughout the game preview. So not all of them are ready yet. For example, the $40 worth of game currency, the store isn't available yet. So there's going to be a store in the future that you can actually buy, customizations for your player, but the store isn't available yet. But if you buy the game, then you'll get $40 worth of in-game currency, which is actually great. I mean, you're paying $20 and that alone, you're going to get $40 worth of in-game currency, so you can just buy a bunch of outfits that you like, which that's really cool that you can actually, just get a jump on other people and buy whatever outfits you prefer for just, supporting the game, which is very nice. But we'll get into more of the game in a second, but I would definitely recommend doing the free trial at least. I mean, this game is definitely worth trying out, I think, and I really love the concept of it. And I think the game's only going to grow more in the future, and I'm definitely glad that I have the full version of that. And I want to give a shout out to Uncteo in my Discord. He actually gifted me this game, so the reason why I have the full game is because he gifted it to me, so I really appreciate that, and thank you, Uncteo, for that. Much appreciated. And because of him, I've been playing this game a lot, and it's been a lot of fun, honestly. And then in addition, for these instances that you jump into, I do want to mention as well that you can actually craft weapons and craft items. So you can craft bandages, you can craft, pistols, things like that. You can actually craft those. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in depth throughout the episode, but we will talk more about that soon. But you can craft items as well. I just wanted to let everyone know that. But that being said, we'll kind of move on and talk about some of the maps now. So as I said before, the maps either has 8 or 16 players. So the small maps will have 8 players in it, and the large maps will have 16 players. Right now, there are 4 large maps and 2 small ones that I could tell. The thing is, you don't ever know how many players are in the game, so it's hard for me to tell that, but just based on the sheer size of it, it seems to me like there's 2 small maps and 4 large. Maybe it's 3 and 3, but the 4 ones that I think are large, they seem like pretty, large, drawn-out maps to me, so I can't see any of those being considered small maps. But the 2 small maps are Fist Factory and Grontheim Valley, which Fist Factory is probably the map that is most congested that I talked about earlier. That map, all the loot is pretty much in one central area for the most part, and, everyone goes there, and it's kind of like a bloodbath there. So Fist Factory, if you like that kind of style of, congested play, then that's probably the map that you're going to like the most. Personally, I don't like the congested play as much, so I'm not a huge fan of Fist Factory, but, I will play it, of course. But it's not my most favorite map for sure. I mean, it'd probably be my least favorite if I ever had to pick one. And then the large maps, there is Jelcanton, Hog Station, which is a train station, Drog Fort, which is like an old military fort, I believe, and Derreck Forest. So just to give you, a small, brief synopsis of the maps, Drog Fort is like a rainy map that is, always storming, and it's a old like military fort, it seems like. And it's got like, silos and things like that. Derreck Forest is a completely snow-covered map, and it's basically, a lot of snow and trees. So if you like that kind of thing, that might be the map you like. Tog Station is an old train station that's like run down, and that's probably my favorite one so far. I've only played it a couple times, but so far I think Tog Station might be my favorite. It's just really cool how it looks and everything, I think. And it has, the railroad tracks, everything you'd expect. Fist Factory, it's like a factory town basically, and the map is divided by a river. Grontheim Valley is a little bit similar in the fact that it's divided by a river, but it's different in the sense that it's more, rural. It's more of a valley-esque type thing, which is why it's called Grantheim Valley probably. But it's more of a rural area, and, hard to describe. It just has a really different feel to it. Like Fist Factory feels more like, a small town. Grantheim Valley feels like, only 3 people lived here throughout their life. So Grantheim Valley definitely feels more, isolated, I would say. And then Gel Canton. Gel Canton's kind of hard to describe. It's a very open map. It has a tiny bit of snow in there, and it also has a lot of green. And there's no river in that one. It's more just open, I would say. It's probably the, most wide open map that like is going to have a lot of open areas where you can find people, or a lot of areas that aren't going to have, a ton of buildings clustered together, I would say. Because a lot of the other maps have like clusters of buildings together, or clusters of like areas where civilization was. And in my opinion, Gel Canton is probably the most open map. So that's how I'd probably describe that one best. Now that we've gone over the maps a little bit, I will go over some of the base building a little more. And again, this is just an intro episode, so, any future episodes, say I did a future episode on base building, I would get into all the nitty-gritty details of base building. What I'm going to get into here is just kind of the basic overview. Like, for example, the maps I just talked about, I could, for example, do a map on just, Gel Canton, or a map episode just on Tog Station. So if I do an episode like that, it's going to be a very in-depth episode about that map or something. So this is just an intro episode to give you kind of a feel for the game and a feel for what's in the game. But any future episodes on Vigor will be a lot more in-depth on a certain topic. And if you want to suggest a topic to me about this game, if you really want, I really want to hear about that certain map, or I really want to hear more about the crafting, then let me know, and, I'm definitely open to hearing suggestions. But the base building, you can make things like wood logs, crafting tables, and scrap bins. So there's like items you can actually build for your base, and they help you out in the future, because these items give you like a better chance to help you in the next instance that you enter, like the next map you actually go into, or it allows you to create weapons faster or work towards upgrading your base. So, like for example, the wood log, that gives you extra materials, which will help you craft more weapons, or it will help you upgrade your base. There's the crafting table. This will decrease the time that it takes to make your weapons. The scrap bin gives you more metal parts. So it's just things like that gives you, things you're going to need, like supplies you're going to need, or it gives you bonuses that might help you out in the future. There's like seed boxes. There's a generator. There's just different things like that you can build. But currently the base building caps at a level 6. Right now I'm at a level 4, I believe. So I'm, fairly close to getting to the level cap. And the reason for that is it's just still in game preview. Because on the actual base building map, like the base screen, there's actually 14 levels shown, but there's just a lot of question marks right now. So they definitely are planning on more levels in the future. Just right now, it's capped out at level 6. But if you played right now, getting to level 6, it'll still take you a little while to get there. So there's still plenty of time to invest in the game before you actually cap yourself out. And I would think before you actually cap yourself out, there's probably going to be more updates to the game where they actually add more levels. But the actual exterior and stuff for your base, or like the interior, besides building these, facilities that go inside your base, you don't really customize that too much yet. There will be base customization in the future, they've said. So, maybe outside of your base, you can have it like, oh, I want my, house to be painted white, or I want a blue house, or, I want my, I want like a fancy chair in my room, or whatever you want. I don't know what the customizations are going to be, but I'm sure there's going to be like different color customizations for your house, or who knows what. And there's no news yet on how those customizations will work, but they have said they want to do base customization. But your base also comes with a shooting range, which is really cool. And the coolest thing about this is it doesn't actually take any ammo to practice at it. So any ammo you have, say you have, 100 bullets, and you take a gun that uses those bullets, when you're actually at your base and you're using the shooting range at your base, you don't actually spend your bullets. You have an infinite amount, and that allows you to, go wild and practice as long as you want. And in this shooting range, there's different things, like there's glass bottles, there's glass plates, there's like milk jugs, there's sand barrels, There's a lot of things like that you can just, take practice shooting, and there's a lot of, there's far off targets, there's close by targets. So it's definitely a lot of fun to try out, the different pistols, the different shotguns, the rifles, and it's definitely a lot of fun to try that. And you can actually use a button to reset your shooting range. So if you, take out everything in the shooting range, and you want to reset it, you can reset it and then just keep going. So that shooting range I really like because it gives you a lot of time to practice if you wanted to practice. And the base menu, it actually has menus where you can collect your drop crates that you have found in the instances. You can enter new instances, which will show like a bigger map where it shows all of the maps that you can actually enter. You can upgrade your base, you can change clothes, and you can craft. So those are some of the menu options you have. And there'll be more you can do in the future. Like, for example, the changing clothes things. There's no store right now, but there's a couple of, set options they have. So you can pick from the set options they already have. But there's no store to buy customizations just yet. That will be coming in the future, though. And how the crates work, too. If you escaped with one of the wooden crates, basically how that works is you can go upstairs to your bedroom. And that's where you can open your crates. And when you open a crate, there's 9 different items inside, it's like a pool of 9 items, basically. So when you open a crate, you get 3 out of 9 items. And you keep, working towards completing that pool. So you could have 2 grenades, 3 of this gun, 3 of that gun, 50 materials, 500 materials, 1,000 materials, etc. You get the picture. You could have 9 different things that you can actually win. And when you open a crate, you get 3 of those 9, and then those 3 are X'd out. And then the next time you open a crate, you get 3 out of the 6 that are left. And the next time you open a crate, you get the last 3. So the 9 that you have there, you will get all those eventually, just it might take you a couple crates to get them. And then when you get all 9, it resets the pool again. So you get a whole new pool of 9, and that's how that works. And I will say, too, that the exterior of the base does change as you upgrade levels. The interior doesn't seem to change much, but I think I got a second bed in my bedroom when I upgraded to level 4. So it seems like the interior has minor changes that you might notice if you're paying attention. But the exterior, you get like a blue tarp over it because they're actually like rebuilding the building because your building's a little bit run down. So it like makes it look like they're rebuilding the building basically. But that's pretty much the basics on base building. Now we're going to talk about the crafting a little bit. So with the crafting, your aim is to get a blueprint of the weapon or item that you're trying to craft. That way you can craft it whenever you want. How this works is you get the blueprints by deconstructing your weapons or items. So say you have an RPK and you really want to be able to make more RPKs in the future. The RPK in particular, that has consisted of 5 parts. So part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and part 5. And basically you have to deconstruct a number of RPKs in order to get all the parts to make that. So essentially think of it like you're trying to take apart these weapons to figure out how to put them back together. That's kind of how I look at it in like the game lore sense. So if you deconstruct an RPK, you might get, I have part 2 now. Then you have to deconstruct some more. You deconstruct another one, I have part 3 now. So you deconstruct another one. I have part 5 now. And that's basically how it works. You have to get all 5 parts. Once you get all the parts for a weapon or item, then you get the blueprint for that item. And when you get the blueprint, you automatically get 1 of the item free. So the game gives you 1 free of the item. And then you get the blueprint. That way you can make more whenever you want. And it's not always 5 parts for everything. Like a lot of the consumables, like say bandages, for example, you only have to deconstruct to get 2 parts. So there's part 1 and part 2. So you can get those items a lot faster and start making this a lot faster. But I will say that it's not always guaranteed you're going to get a different part every time. Like say you deconstructed, a weapon and you might get 2 part 2s. So if you get 2 part 2s, it's not a complete lost cause. What you would do is you just deconstruct one of those part 2s and then you get some materials back. So basically you get some materials out of it. So it does, it's not a complete lost cause. Just sometimes you don't always get the part you want. So it's kind of a little bit of risk there, but it's worth it to try and deconstruct to get those blueprints. And once you have the blueprint for it, you can craft as many of them as you want as long as you have the materials for it. So, if you have a blueprint for this certain gun and you have a lot of materials, you could craft like 10 of those if you wanted to. It doesn't matter how many you want to craft. As long as you have the materials for it, then you can craft as many as you'd like as long as you have the blueprint materials. And the weapons and consumables, they cost various amounts of materials to craft. The starting knife, I've I'm blanking on the name right now, but the starting knife that you get, that costs 100 materials to make, so it's pretty cheap. But then like some of the guns as you go up the ladder, they cost like 800 materials to make or 1200 materials to make. So the better the weapon or item is, usually the more materials it'll take to craft one of those items. So like you could craft, like 8 knives for the cost of like one of your guns, for example. So sometimes it's better to, stock up on your knives more just to try and have more opportunity to use those weapons. But it's really based on your playstyle. I mean, it's how you want to play and, what you want to use. I mean, if you really love using the guns and you like really love a certain gun, you could craft like 5 of that gun if you wanted to. It's just however you want to balance your resources. And that's what's cool about it is the player has a lot of choice in how they want to balance their resources and how much they actually want to risk in the world. But you can craft consumables like antibiotics, frag grenades, bandages, and things like that. And the different weapons, you can craft things like a Mosin Nagant, a Luger pistol. There's several different knives. You can craft an RPK, a Scorpion, an AKM, and that's just a couple of them off the top of my head. I'm not going to get into every weapon, but that's just because you kind of an idea. There's other shotguns too, so you can craft like shotguns, you can craft pistols, rifles. Some of the rifles are like more sniper-esque. Some of them are more machine gun type rifles, like the Scorpion. So it really depends on your playstyle, but you can find a different weapon and try and deconstruct that to get a blueprint. And I will say some of these weapons are pretty rare too. I mean, there's some of the weapons I've never even seen once yet, like the Scorpion, for example. I still have not seen a Scorpion in game yet, so yeah, some of these weapons seem pretty rare, and you just have to, wait and see when you find it, I guess. But that's pretty much it for the crafting, for the basics of it at least. I mean, like I said, if we do a future episode on just crafting, I get into the nitty-gritty of it. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the instances now, which, again, what an instance is, that sounded kind of weird, sorry, instances, but what an instance will be is when you actually enter into a map and you go, try to loot things. So you start at your base, and if you want to try and get more loot for your base, what you're going to do is enter a map. And when you enter that map, that is called an instance. And basically, this is where the other players can actually attack you now if they found you, and you actually are vulnerable. When you're at your base, you're not vulnerable at all, but when you're in the maps, you are vulnerable. So you go around the maps, and you basically try to loot stuff. You're looting cars, dressers in houses, suitcases, just anything you find in the world. You're looting to try and get supplies. And then at some point, the supply drop will come, and you have to decide, okay, do I want to go for the supply drop? Do I not want to go for it? But you have a lot of decisions to make, and even if you see another player, you can try to sneak up on that player. You could try to take them head on. You could run away from them. It's really up to you how you want to play it, because it's not a battle royale game. And a lot of people have asked me that in the stream. It's definitely not battle royale, because the object here is to get into the game, get as much loot as you can, and escape. Your object is not to be the last player standing. The object is to get as much loot as possible and escape the game. So you drop into the map, and you're allowed to choose any loadout you want to bring with you. So you could bring just a knife. You could bring, several machine guns. You could bring a shotgun with no ammo and hope you find ammo in the world. You could bring nothing at all if you want. I mean, I've tried a couple of games to play nothing at all. I mean, I've actually had some decent success with that. I think I played 11 games now where I jumped into the game with nothing, and actually 10 out of those 11 times, I survived the game and got out with loot. So that's definitely a success. I mean, if you're jumping in the game with nothing and 10 out of 11 times, you get some loot and get out of there, like, that's pretty good. I've definitely played a lot more games where I do use stuff, but it's fun to try it sometimes, just, jumping in there with nothing and having to go, oh, shoot, I can't defend myself, so I have to try and play this differently. And it's definitely fun to switch things up, to jump in with nothing, to jump in with a knife, to jump in with like a really good machine gun. It really changes up your play style based on what you have. And the same thing goes to your opponent too. Because if you hear a machine gun in the distance and you only have a pistol, obviously your opponent has the upper hand on you. So you have to try and play your strategy a little bit different, because if they find you head to head, they're probably winning that because they have the distance on you and they have the rate of fire on you. So they can take you out a lot faster and from a lot farther distance. So that's why you have to try and play careful if you don't have a machine gun and you come up against someone that does. That's why usually for me, if I don't have a machine gun myself and I hear someone with a machine gun, I try to crouch a little bit and just kind of see where they are and hopefully, sneak up on them and like maybe knife them or something. It just depends, what the situation is really. I will reiterate though, if you die, then you lose everything you brought with you forever, including everything you acquired in that game. So if you acquired, oh, I found a really cool gun in this game that I didn't have in my base, and you brought in, 3 knives with you as well, you would lose all 3 of those knives and that gun you found in the game. So everything you have, you just lose it all completely, and you don't get it back. So that's why you have to be careful and know when is the good time to escape and when is the good time to fight and when is the good time to stay in the map. But I talked about escaping a couple of times. There's several exits on each map. These exits are marked by orange X's. So when you look at your map screen, you'll see a lot of orange X's. Those orange X's are the exits to the map. And depending on the map, there's between 4 and 8 exits in a map. Some maps have only 4 exits. Some have like up to 8. So, the map that you're on might have a ton of exits, a ton of options to go to, or it might only have 4. And this really changes up gameplay a lot too, because say you're trying to go for the drop, but somebody gets to the wooden crate first, then you have to try and decide, okay, where are they going to try and exit? There's 3 exits around here. Are they going to go for this exit? Are they going to go for this one? Or are they going to go for this one? And you have to try and kind of play a little bit of a guessing game and try and pick where they're going to go. Because if you pick the wrong one, they're probably going to escape with the crate and, they'll get all the loot. If you pick the right one, you might be able to actually catch up to them and kill them before they get out. So it's really kind of a little bit of strategy in there where you want to exit. You might not want to pick the exit that's closest to the drop crate. If you get the drop crate yourself, you might not want to pick the closest exit. You might want to pick one that's a little bit farther away just to fool people. So it's up to you how you want to play that in your head. But as I said before, your goal is not to be the last one standing. Your goal is to get as much loot as you possibly can and escape. And then, like I said, the air supply drop will come at some point. Just be patient if you're trying to go for that. Sometimes it comes pretty fast, and sometimes the supply drop takes forever to come. So, you just have to kind of wait it out. And if you're trying to wait for it, maybe get into the zone, maybe hide in a bush for a little while until it comes. It just depends if you're trying to go for that or if you're not trying to go for it. But that does have better loot in that wooden crate if you do get it. I don't always go for the wooden crate. It just depends on my mood for that game. But say you did get that wooden crate and you went. If you get that wooden crate, your object should be to try and exit immediately. Because other players are going to know that the wooden crate's gone, and at certain intervals, the map will kind of flash your location to people. So it doesn't constantly show your location, but it'll do little flashes every once in a while to let people know where you are. So if you get that wooden crate, you should be instantly trying to exit. So if you are trying to exit, then you go towards one of those orange X's. If you get to the orange X and the exit point, you have to wait 10 seconds there to exit. Or what you can do is you can find a pile of rocks that has an orange X on it. And if you find this pile of rocks with the orange X, you can actually click the X button and exit the game instantly. And I should say too, I probably should have said this way earlier, but this game is only available on Xbox right now. They haven't announced if they want to port it to PS4 or PC yet, but they haven't seemed like they're interested in that right now. So this is a Xbox only exclusive right now. I do apologize. I probably should have mentioned that way earlier, but it's Xbox only. It only occurred to me when I said, press X. So yeah, if you find that pile of rocks with the orange X on it, you can just exit instantly instead of waiting the 10 seconds. And this is very valuable if somebody's chasing you. If somebody's chasing you, obviously don't want to wait 10 seconds. You want to, run right to those rocks and hit X. But if somebody's chasing you and you do actually kill them, or if you kill a player in general, then what's going to happen is they're going to drop a box. It's kind of like a little crate, and it'll have all their gear in it. So if you kill somebody, they'll drop a box next to them. You just look in that box. It'll have all the gear they had on them, and then you can steal all their gear, which is very nice because you can get a lot of gear that way too. So, if you are someone that likes a lot of PvP, that is definitely a viable strategy to try and, kill players and steal what they have and, escape that way. But if you're someone that doesn't like PvP, then, it's definitely viable to just jump in there, get some loot, and escape without ever fighting players. And that's kind of the beauty of this game, is it kind of supports both styles of play. Going to have some interactions where if you're someone that likes PvP, you may never find anyone in that game, and you have to, not play PvP. Or vice versa, if you're someone that only likes to, play with the environment and survive, you may not want to fight somebody, but you might have to at some points. So it's a kind of nice balance, I think, where like I'm kind of in the middle. Like I sway more towards not liking PvP, but I do like it in some occasions. So I'm kind of more in the middle. So I do like the balance it provides because there's opportunities for both in there. And then I do want to mention too that if you stay in a map too long, then actually what's going to happen is radiation will start. So radiation starts to emerge, and you can hear this by a clicking noise. If you hear a clicking noise, it's not like, your headset, it's not like your controller or something. That is the game telling you that radiation is coming into the game. And basically what this means is, the more clicks you hear, like that means the radiation is getting closer to you, and your screen will actually start to go white too. So if your screen starts going white, the clicks get faster, the clicks get louder, that means the radiation is getting closer to you, and basically the radiation can kill you. So think of the radiation, if you're familiar with PUBG or Fortnite, think of it like the storm in those. It's basically like the storm in those where this can kill you if you wait in the game too long. So you can't, just stay in the game forever and loot forever. You have to escape at some point. And what's cool is the radiation actually goes in like a wind pattern. So, if you're on like the top left of the map and the radiation starts there, you can just, keep running to the bottom right and you can get more time to escape. So the radiation just goes basically one direction and sweeps across the map. So what I've had happen sometimes is I was going for one exit, but as I went for that exit, I realized, oh shoot, the radiation, is coming this way. So what I did is I changed direction. I went for a different exit. So it kind of changes up your strategy a little bit that way. But that's pretty much the, basics on the instances and everything. The last thing I'll get into is just some of their future plans, because the devs have, announced some things that they're working on and aspects of the game that they want to bring in before February. So, again, this game comes free to play on February, and basically before then, the devs are trying to get a lot of these things that I'm about to talk about into the game. So one of the big ones that a lot of people have asked for is co-op, and the devs have said that they are planning to do co-op, and that is something they definitely want to do, because right now, unfortunately, what's happening is a lot of players, because it's only solo right now, a lot of players are getting a friend and trying to time it so they, jump into a map at the same time and team up in that map, which is something you definitely shouldn't do because it's really unfair right now, and a lot of players are upset about that. Because obviously, there's no teaming involved right now where you're not supposed to be doing that. But if they introduce co-op in the future like they want to, that will actually limit some of that, and it'll make it so if you want to jump in with a pair, you can actually jump into a game of just pairs, which would be really fun, actually, and I would enjoy that. But another thing is they're going to be doing some more base customization, so you will be able to customize your base in the future, and in addition to that, there's going to be more base building options and levels, because, as I said, it caps out at level 6 right now, but you can go all the way to level 14, so, there's going to be more base building options, more features in the base, and ways to customize it. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that exactly because they haven't released any specifics, but I think in a couple weeks they said this is their first big update, so we'll see what happens in that update. And, maybe next episode I'll talk about what happened in that update and let everyone know. But in addition to that, there's going to be a store with more character customization options. So anyone that gets that Founders Pack, that will be coming, and you will get money for that store where you could actually buy some customizations. So that'll be a nice plus. And, a lot of people like to customize their character a certain way, so that'll be great when they do that. I'm not sure what style the customizations will be in, but it'll be fun to see what they do with that. And in addition to that, kind of along the same lines, there's going to be emotes as well. So I don't know what emotes will be available, but you do get one special emote when you buy the Founders Pack. So you'll get one emote at least when you start. Well, not technically when you start, but when they actually introduce emotes into the game, you'll get that emote with it then. I did write down more maps. I'm not specifically sure if they said more maps. I thought I remembered hearing that they're making more maps, but don't quote me on that one because they may not be making more maps, but I believe they are. So, there might be more maps in the future, but I think that's something that if they did do it, it'd be, a lot further in the future. So I would think there's not going to be any new maps until like, say, January or February, like right before launch, or maybe like at launch, they'll have a new map. So I wouldn't expect any new maps soon just because they're trying to get all these other things in the game. But I do feel like if they're going to, support this game like they say they will, then there will be new maps eventually. There's also going to be weapon attachments at some point. They do want to get those in the game, they said. Right now there aren't any, but they want to get like, scopes and muzzles, things like that into the game. So that will be very nice that you can actually attach things to your weapons in the future. A silencer too. A silencer would be really nice because that would make it a lot more stealthy for you. And I personally would actually love to play with a silencer and, play a stealth aspect game, maybe put a silencer on a pistol and, kind of crouch around, try and shoot people like that. But that's kind of like the main things that they have said that's going to come in the future. The last thing I wrote down is they are going to fix a lot of the prevalent issues in the game right now, which the two biggest issues, which I haven't been shy about saying this, like I said it plenty of times in my stream, that the two biggest issues in this game right now are the shooting mechanics and the looting mechanics, which, that sounds pretty bad because they say this is a shoot and loot game, and what I'm saying is the, biggest issues are the shooting and looting, but when I talk about that deeper, you'll probably understand because basically the issues with those aren't in the concept of it, it's just in the mechanics. Like, mechanically, they just need to work on it to make it a little bit more streamlined. Like, for example, the looting, like, say I go up to a truck and I try to loot that truck, I can still loot that truck and it still, works essentially, but problem is the, like, loot marker or, like, the hit marker on the loot, where you're supposed to loot it, it doesn't work as properly as it should, because if I go up to a truck and you think, okay, I can just loot this truck, or you go up to the trunk, you loot the truck, it is not always the same spot. So you can go up to the truck and you go, I can't loot here. Okay, let me walk around to this side of the truck. Let me try this door. Let me try the back of the truck. Let me try the trunk. Like, you have to walk around the entire truck and figure out, okay, where can I actually loot this thing? Or let me back up a little bit. Maybe I'm too close to the truck, or maybe I'm too far away from the truck. Let me go forward a little bit. So it's kind of frustrating at times because the loot doesn't work as well as you'd want it to, because you can still loot stuff. It's just, it takes a little bit of playing around sometimes. So you have to figure out, okay, where's the sweet spot on this truck that I can actually loot it? And I found it's worse with trucks usually. Like, say you're looting in a house, it's usually not as bad if you're looting in a house. Like, if you loot a dresser or you loot like a fridge or whatever you're looting in a house, usually those things work pretty well. It's mostly the vehicles. So if you're trying to loot a vehicle, just understand that the looting mechanics for looting vehicles, they do need improvements, and they do know that, and they are working on that. So, hopefully in the future they'll have it so all you have to do is walk up to the truck, hit X, and you looted it. Like, hopefully it's that simple, because that's how simple it should be. Because it hasn't happened to me yet, but I've been worried sometimes where, I'm spending like a minute or two trying to loot one truck, and somebody could walk up on me at any point and kill me while I'm trying to figure out how to loot this truck. And that's not how it should be. I mean, the game should be, I can walk up to a truck, loot it, and, keep focusing on the game. But it sometimes draws your focus away, because your focus ends up being, how do I loot this stupid truck? Instead of, okay, where's the next player at? Where's this drop going to be? But your focus, it ends up being too central on, how do I loot this one object? And that's not how it should be. So, I will admit that it is frustrating sometimes, but I would just say, have a little bit of patience with that, because they do know about the issue and they are working on it. And it is still in game preview and it is still very early. So they do have plenty of time before the full launch in February to fix these issues. And again, the other issue is shooting. I mean, the hit markers on the shooting are pretty bad, honestly. I mean, shooting fights, like, it's more just spraying prey sometimes. Like, some people are very good at it because they've had a lot of practice and they've figured out how to, use these guns like to a T. But for someone that's brand new, it's very hard to learn how to shoot with this game right now. And they said they know about that, and that's their top priority. So their top priority is fixing the shooting mechanics, because for a new player right now, if you were to jump in this without knowing, anything about the game, you're probably going to lose pretty much every gunfight you get into, because it's just kind of spray and pray, and the hit markers are just so bad right now in the shooting. Which, honestly, maybe that's why I like the knife a lot. Because, I mean, the hit marker on the knife works perfectly, so I like using the knife. So I would recommend the knife. It's very fun to kill people with a knife in this game. It's kind of funny sometimes. I actually had one person, he had a pistol and he was trying to shoot me. and I was just knifing him. I crouched down, I kept knifing him in the stomach, and he was trying to shoot me, but he kept shooting over my head. It was just kind of funny, actually, because I just kept knifing him in the stomach, and eventually he died. So, which they did actually nerf the knifing a little bit. I think it used to take like 2 hits to kill somebody with a knife. Now I think it takes like 4 or 5. So they did nerf it a little bit. That way it's a little bit more fair, I guess, because I think they were finding a lot of people, were dying with guns to players with knives. So they wanted to make it a little more balanced. But it's still very fun to knife people, so. But yeah, I mean, just be patient with the shooting and the looting. It is, a pretty big focus of this game, and they know that the mechanics aren't perfect yet, and that's kind of what the purpose of Game Preview is to help them, get better with this. But, Bohemia Interactive is the studio that makes Vigor. It's the same studio that made DayZ, and I do feel like they're, committed to actually improving this game and making it better. And I'm definitely glad that I have the full version and that I can see this game grow as it, gets more things added into it. But hopefully that gives everyone, a good picture of what Vigor is, because I get asked a lot of times in my stream, a lot of these questions. And now, if you're wondering what it is, you can just, reference this episode. And this basically gives you a total overview of what the game is. There's nothing I covered super in depth here, but I think I've touched on every aspect of the game a little bit at least. That way it gives you a sense of, how the game works and what your objective is in the game. And if anyone has any future questions, hit me up on any of the social media platforms I have and let me know. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Blaise XPerience. My gamer tag is the same exact thing. That's capital BLAISE, capital XPerience. So just Blaise XPerience for my gamer tag or my Twitter. My email, if you want to send me an email, is theblaisexperience@gmail.com. My mixer is mixer.com/Blaise XPerience. So if you want to see me stream this, I usually stream Vigor on Tuesdays. So when this episode comes out, this episode will come out on Wednesday. So unfortunately, I've already streamed this by the time this episode comes out. But the next Tuesday after, you can, watch me stream Vigor. I usually stream Vigor on Tuesdays, and I usually stream State of Decay on Fridays. And then, as I said before, State of Decay, I release an episode on Saturday, and on Wednesday, I release a different episode every week. So Vigor has now finally entered that rotation, and we'll start talking some more Vigor, every so often. But if you want to find the podcast, you can do so on Google Play, Google Podcasts. You can do it on Apple Podcasts, Acast, Radio Public, Podbean, Blueberry, many other directories. So most of the directories, we're going to be in there. I think the only ones we're not in are like Spotify and Spreaker. Spotify and Spreaker are pretty hard to get into, and I haven't been able to get into those yet. But besides those two, I think I'm on pretty much all the platforms. But like I said earlier, the next stream will be Friday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern on State of Decay 2. The next podcast will also be on Saturday for State of Decay 2. And I do know already next Wednesday's podcast, that is scheduled to be another podcast on Sea of Thieves. So if you like Sea of Thieves, next Wednesday I'll have a new one on that. And like I said before, if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely check out the guest appearance I did on Horrible Gamers Podcast, episode 220. It was a great episode. We talked about a lot of the things from Gamescom. We talked about some of their community questions. And we talked about some of the games we've been playing. And I talked a little bit about Vigor on there. And I talked about some State of Decay on there. They talked about some of the games they've been playing. So it's definitely a great podcast. And I would really recommend checking it out. And I will put that link in the show notes. So I really appreciate everyone listening. And thank you so much for listening to the Blaise XPerience.